Hello my wonderful Coldplayers. It seems that hints and actually pretty obvious signs of the new album are growing with each day, so I thought I'd make this video to discuss everything we can expect from the new album. And if you're able to find any of this interesting or useful at all, I would encourage you to please subscribe and help a fellow Coldplayer. Now let's get started. First and foremost, if you have not already seen it, Coldplay first teased the new album in the release of Everyday Life. In the middle of the booklet included in the album, there is a billboard that states Music of the Spheres, and in tiny print it also says Coldplay coming soon. And this of course was accompanied by the symbol with the 6 circles. Now it's not certain that Music of the Spheres will be the official title of the album, but I'll be referring to it as if it is in this video. And it's going to be a pretty important topic while we're discussing everything, so I thought I'd touch on it just a little bit for anyone who may not have seen it. Now I'm going to be breaking down this video into 3 sections, 1 focusing on the sound of the album, 2 focusing on the concept of the album, and 3 focusing on the logistics. So starting with number 1, what is it going to sound like? A pretty popular opinion is that the album will have a heavy pop influence, something that is upbeat and more considered radio music. Now before they released Everyday Life, it was rumored that Coldplay would be releasing an experimental album, Everyday Life, and then follow it up with a more mainstream album. Think of it kind of like how it was going from Ghost Stories to A Head Full of Dreams, where Coldplay was able to get out all that experimental sound in preparation for a bigger, more tour-friendly sound. Another indicator of this pop sound is that the song Orphans was intended to be on this coming album, but they decided to release it with Everyday Life. And with Orphans being one of the only real pop songs from Everyday Life, I think it's safe to assume that we can expect more of that kind of sound. Now there are a lot of rumors going around that Music of the Spheres is going to have a space rock type of sound, so let's talk about that. A lot of the speculation comes from the presumed title of the album, Music of the Spheres, which is a philosophical concept that talks about unique connections between music, math, and astronomy. And going along with this idea is that image in the booklet that I mentioned at the very beginning. It has what appears to be orbiting figures with 9 different symbols. So with all this branding, it appears that Coldplay is going in the space-themed direction. But does that mean that the music is going to be space rock? I'd actually be pretty skeptical about this one, and here's why. Coldplay does a super good job of transitioning their sound and keeping up with the times while still appealing to their insanely large audience. Now I think I can speak for most when saying that the peak of the space rock Coldplay era was X and Y, with songs like Square One, White Shadows, and Speed of Sound. But does it really make sense to revert back to that style? If you look at all the music Coldplay has released since X and Y, they don't really seem too keen on drawing back from that era. However, I think a good compromise lies in a gem we saw in the Kaleidoscope EP. Yes, I'm talking about Aliens. It's a song that continues with their modern pop style and using electronic sounds and beats, while also some space-sounding ominous synths. So will Coldplay have a space rock sound on this album? I'm again a little skeptical on that, but if they do, we could probably expect to see something similar to Aliens. And now to talk about something a little bit more controversial. With Coldplay being as popular and as loved as they are, of course, some of their unreleased music is bound to get leaked. And although I'm not a huge fan of leaking unreleased songs without permission of the artist, I think we can safely discuss what we have heard. First and foremost, there is The Race. Going back to July of 2020, I believe it was, what appeared to be an almost finished product of the song was leaked, and the Coldplay community went nuts. Now, if you're somebody who is able to hear it, you know that it's pretty upbeat and poppy and something that could have easily been released side by side with A Sky Full of Stars. And apparently it almost was. Rumors say that The Race was intended to be released on Ghost Stories, but it was a little too upbeat, so Coldplay decided to wait until an appropriate moment to release the song, like with this new album. The song itself features a strong beat, piano parts, a sample of a higher background voice, which I will actually touch on in a moment, and a very prominent guitar lick at the very beginning of the piece. If the song is actually released with the new album, I could easily see it being a single. Now moving on to a more recent leak. On March 26th of this year, at the end of what was supposed to be a private interview on Clubhouse, Chris was asked to play a song, and to everyone's surprise, he did. And of course that interview was recorded and uploaded on the internet for all to hear. Now Chris never mentioned a title for the song, but he did mention that the song would indeed be released, as he put it, sometime, but the listener could easily assume that he meant the song would be released on the next album. The song itself, which most are referring to as The Moon or I Love You to the Moon, appears to be a ballad. Slow tempo, heartfelt lyrics, you know, the whole intimate Chris experience. So regardless of what the album is going to sound like as a whole, we can safely expect there to be another ballad similar to Everglow or Daddy, and I'd argue to say that is probably going to have some kind of piano lead. So in general, if I were to say what the sound of the album would be in comparison to another album, I would say it would likely sound like A Head Full of Dreams, but a step farther. So I think it will have the same characteristics of A Head Full of Dreams, like the uplifting, energetic, theatric pop sound. But as I mentioned before, Coldplay has a tendency of transitioning onto a new sound with each album, so we can probably expect to see something new, whether that's in instrumentation or in content. And speaking of content, here is what we can expect the album concept to be about. Now, as we looked at before, from the title of Music of the Spheres to the leak of I Love You to the Moon, and even the previous interest in the matter, I think we're safe to say that it has something to do with space. And regardless of what the album will sound like, the theme is pretty apparent. And it's kind of cool because Coldplay has been talking about the stars going all the way back to Yellow. Now, something that I hadn't mentioned, but relevant to the topic, Chris mentioned that they had been re-recording old songs like UFO. Now, I'm not confident that the re-release of UFO would be on this next album, but the concept of space is definitely pretty fresh in their minds. Another theme that is pretty safe to say will likely be on the album is their interest in current events and politics. It's something that has become more prevalent in their music, social interactions, and messaging. Even with the album of Everyday Life, they had songs like Guns, Trouble in Town, and Orphans, which all deal with current social issues. As the trend has only been increasing with time, I'd be willing to bet that we can expect more of this on this next album. Another quick theme that you can expect from this album, of course, is their message of love. Coldplay and the concept of empathy and compassion towards others are basically inseparable, so don't expect that to change. And now the final thing that I wanted to bring up in regards to the album concept is Angelina. Now you're probably wondering, who the heck is she? Well, technically it's uncertain, but we're all pretty sure it's Chris. And if you've listened to their beautiful waltz Cry Cry Cry, you actually already know who she is. That voice that introduces the song singing Cry 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 Baby is Angelina. And it's interesting because she's even credited by that name in the song's information. And here's a quote from Chris himself about said character. "There's more to come from that story in a bit of time. It's sort of a character that we made called Angelina. She's a new voice in our band. It's secretly another person pitched up, but I can't possibly say who. She's an alien." So the two things that I want to focus on this are that one, Chris says there's more to come from that story, which makes it seem like they might intend on using her again in a future album. And two, she's an alien. Now, is there a coincidence of her being an alien in the possible space theme of Music of the Spheres? Maybe. But also, I mentioned before that the race had a similar high voice set in the background, so could that have been Angela? Only time will tell, but it would be super cool if they had developed this alien character in their next space theme album, maybe even something similar to Milo, and maybe even have a comic about her. And now just to touch on some logistics. Now, I'm pretty sure all of you are eagerly waiting to hear when this album is going to be released. And I'm super excited to say that the album will be released on... Of course, I do not have the answer for that. However, if you are interested in a speculation, it is currently rumored that it will be released this September. Now, should you absolutely believe that and get your hopes up about it? No. Like with the license plate that was on the car and the image that we talked about before, people thought that it meant that it would be released on April 2nd of 2020 or February 4th of 2020, but all of the speculated dates so far have passed and no Coldplay album. So don't get your hopes up too much. However, if it is released September of this year, let it be known that you heard it here first. And the other logistic that I wanted to talk about is how they will announce the album. Of course, there's no real way of telling how they will do this, but I thought I'd bring it up as a little food for thought. For Everyday Life, they put those posters in all the cities across the world and even sent out those really cool postcards, of which I was unfortunately unable to get. So it'd be interesting to see if they play off this whole space theme and have something related to a specific alignment of planets or an anniversary of an event in space history. Yeah, there's a lot to be left to the imagination, so if you have any ideas, feel free to comment below. And that, my friends, is what you can expect from the soon approaching new Coldplay album. Now, if you found any of this interesting at all, I would encourage you to please subscribe as well as ring that bell for the fastest updates on the new album. And please follow me on my other social accounts, which are linked in the description below. Because you know I'm going to be the first to tweet about anything regarding the new album. So in the meantime, comment and let me know what you expect to see, and hopefully we'll find out more soon. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Ba ba da ba da ba da ba ba.